Hi, I'm Brad. Well, that hurt. I have a lot of new people subscribing to the channel, and if you're new, welcome. I've got to do a lot of cool things in VR over the 6 or 7 years I've really been kind of deep into it. And one of the things I'm really most proud of in my time of virtual reality is making maps for Half Life Alyx. I made 3 workshop maps, and they're still some of the top 20, I think all 3 of them. It was the first time I really did anything related to, well, level design or really anything creating stuff for a game. This is Mindbreak Chapter 2. It is a continuation of the Mindbreak series and basically would end up becoming the final one. I did 2 other videos on my other maps, and basically Mindbreak Chapter 1 was something I fell really flat. And while I was most proud of my first map, which was known as Crash Course, and a lot of people liked Mindbreak Chapter 1, I feel this map, Mindbreak Chapter 2, is all the culmination of everything I've learned from making maps. So again, while I'm more subjectively aware that I like Crash Course more, this one is objectively, to me at least, a better map experience. So we're going to explore the maps together, and I'm going to explain all the things I've learned. Without warning, I pretty much decide, hey, one of the coolest things in VR is elevation, and really a sense of scale. At the end of Mindbreak Chapter 1, you're kind of locked in here due to a pretty much wall collapse of the cave. I had to figure out an interesting way to sort of entice the player to keep going forward, so I figured down, even more down than underground, would be the right way to go. This looks horrifying. Now, let's keep going. I have not much to say about this little area and the whole sort of gameplay element of going down here. I just think it looks really pretty with all the particle effects, and having this sort of barnacle here can actually shield the player if they're actually standing behind it. So on higher difficulties, you can even allow the antlion to kill the barnacle for you without wasting any ammo. Before we go on further, I want to talk about scale and sense of height. Even though we are an underground cave, you might notice that the walls and ceiling actually feels pretty tall. I'm about to explain a little bit what I believe this setting was supposed to be. Antlions are giant creatures. I wanted to make a space that seemed like, well, something that they would actually procreate in and walk around. As we go forward, I want everyone in the audience to notice what I'm looking at, mostly up. So again, this is an antlion burrow, but it's not natural, or at least fully. The idea was, what if the Combine were able to create a natural, or I guess unnatural, antlion farm? The Combine in Half Life Alyx are seen actually milking the blood off of these antlion creatures to use for their containment procedures. I found it hard to believe that an advanced sort of species such as the Combine would resort to capturing only wild creatures instead of resorting to farming. And this was my idea of what maybe they would do. So even though these are tall structures in large caves, this is actually not nearly as tall as what I would do with effects related to the original Mindbreak Chapter 1. I had one area near the end where it was a much larger space, and I actually had a strider that would walk across the top of the ceiling, but players, due to the fact that I've noticed this from watching people playtest my maps after the fact I release it, tend not to look up very often, especially if there's no sort of visual cues or anything that really force them to do so. They would hear the strider walk around, and immediately they would only look left and right and down. I think players naturally, especially with these FOV headsets that were limited with for hardware-wise, just don't want to stretch their neck up. So when I had this sort of vault close, my biggest worry was, well, what if that happened again? So while this is a large location, I actually playtested and lowered the ceiling as much as I can to make sure that when you walked up to this point, the player would see a full view of the entire area, including the ceiling. Watching playtests of this map around this area, about 90% of people saw the vault close and even saw the Combine close the gate, which is way better progress than the Strider in my last map. This whole platform here is obviously in the hive, and it was really just sort of a emergency platform for Combine to be able to get out in case they were locked back in. You might wonder, well, why is there a barnacle here? Well, I noticed that players were not immediately going over to the console, so I figured if I actually put a barnacle in the player's way, they would be like, oh, I gotta shoot this. Usually the game actually forces barnacles in your path, and guess what? Just adding this barnacle forced more players to actually walk all the way down to the console, to where you need to activate an event before you can go on further. There's also a great chance really for players to get up close to the barnacle. It looks really creepy and ginormous when you're actually at scale. Most players commented on that in actual video playtesting. This is a vault override. It basically doesn't matter what you do here, since I was not really good enough to program anything special. This map came out pretty much a month after the official tools came out and the workshop was released. There was a lot of learning still on the community because Valve does not like to provide documentation for really anything. So yeah, let's start the event. Here we go! This was probably one of the more difficult segments for people in a lot of my maps. It was a very close space, and I made an actual ramp so the antlions could actually walk up to the player. Most of the times when Half Life Alyx, when you would fight antlions, it was usually in very open spaces. So I wanted to see how players would do in a closed space, where they're very limited where they can go with antlions shooting at you from the front and back. If you think that looked hard, yeah. Originally this wall that would protect you from the actual ranged antlions behind you didn't exist. And I realized, yeah, that was a little bit too much. This is also the gun that we'd use in the campaign to actually fight the Strider. If you don't know about that, well, you probably shouldn't be watching workshop maps and really level design things, but yeah, players loved this, and it was very interesting to shoot them against antlions. It was like one-shot kills, and people enjoyed it a lot, including me. So since the vault didn't work and sounded an alarm and only made the antlion hive crazy, we had to figure out where to go. Luckily, one of the antlions buried a hole, or at least that's kind of the point of what's supposed to happen down here. A lot of players would try to jump down there, even though there's a lot of antlions and what looks to be a fall to your death with a lot of fog. Yeah, didn't really expect that, but that's kind of neat to watch players fall to their death. This is something that's not really in the real game. It's basically a wireless remote to control this. There's actually 2 around the area just in case the player would lose them. Yeah, I didn't really know how to actually solve if players would throw this down or actually shoot a grenade or even the gun over here, which would send the actual remote flying down the hill and soft lock people. So just adding more of these remotes around here ended up working. This thing here I'm standing on, yeah, it's a little buggy, I'm not gonna lie, but it's the best I could do. Someone left the door open and we're gonna take advantage of that. Again, I'm a big fan of verticality and just really going up and down in my maps. You'll notice that a lot. I just enjoy it. It looks cool when you look down from afar and just see where you've just been. So while the underground was all about the antlion, we're going to see the actual above ground where actually the combine are working to actually milk the things. Clearly when I sounded the alarm and someone left the door open, there was a fight going on without you really knowing. And looks like the combine won, but not without any casualties. This is just an extra little thing to close the door, because someone didn't. You might as well close the door for them. The only reason I added that was originally I had a plan to have antlions spawn behind you if you didn't actually close this door, but it didn't really work out the way I thought, and yeah. Unfortunately, it was still cool though to see the vault close, because again, it's ginormous in VR. Yeah. So this is the area that spent the most time, not only just making it, but also pre-production and planning for it. You'll see there's a lot of combine down there, and for some reason they'll never notice you looking down at them from the window. This is a scripted event, or at least it can be depending on the player decides to actually mess with this. Most players did. Antlion release control. I got tired of using these puzzles, but really it was the only way I could figure out to actually make the padding for this sort of area worth it. I still didn't make it that difficult, as you'll see very soon.
Okay, make quick work of that.
All right, battery. All right, if the players actually did, they would be rewarded with a small, well, this. If you ever played Gary's Mod and enjoyed spawning enemies to fight each other, that's kind of where the inspiration came from. Well, it looks like the antlion won this time, but it's kind of random, to be honest. Obviously, the player can choose not to actually activate that event, which would be kind of lame, but yeah. You never know what you're going to end up fighting when you come down here. I will say my favorite sort of things about making maps in Half Life Alyx were making these sort of scripted events. And really, this scripted event wasn't much except adding a console that would open up some things and spawn some enemies. Add some music and sound effects into the mix, and yeah, it sounds pretty good. I hear another. I find it funny they actually walk in there. It wasn't my plan to actually make the tube enough to where they could walk in there, but yeah, it seems they always do that if they actually live. So here's the antlion milking facility. It's pretty much as good as I can think about it, what it would be. Let's talk about one more thing related to VR level design. It's not something you should plan to do your maps, but it's a kind of cool tidbit you might not ever think of. So this wall that's kind of wrapped around these sort of tubes was actually not given a collision model at first. What does that mean? Well, players could have, if they wanted to, actually walk through this wall, and yeah, there would be nothing there, but players could do it if they wanted to, due to a bug on my part. But there was only one person of many playtests I watched that actually did it, and they did it by accident. Players, for the most part, will actually respect the boundaries of a world or level design. They don't really, in real life, expect to actually be able to peek their heads through solid objects, especially in a game like this. So, yeah, do with that information as you will. Half Life Alyx does not have good water. That's all I can say. There's sludge here, and that's about it, and it goes down to under the gratings where there's more water. And it looks terrible. Nothing I could have done could make that look better. Whoops. I like being very cheeky with my enemy placements, especially for head crabs. You'll see what I mean. We're nearing the end, and again, I placed water everywhere, so this is the ugliest part of the map. Real ugly. Real ugly. Now, I want to go back again to talk about Crash Course. Yeah, this map actually, for some reason, connects into the beginning of Crash Course. No one really realized it except for one person again, but that was in a later section. If you play Crash Course, there's a part where you leave the original room through a vent. And when you look down through a vent grating, you would see Combine and Antlions fighting in what looks to be a sewer. Yeah, basically up there. Why did I do it? I don't know, I thought it would be cool. You can't do that in Crash Course, though. Keep an eye out and you'll see a fast head crab. When you walk up close enough, it will run. Yeah, the fast head crabs actually do have animations kind of attached to them, but obviously they kind of cut fast head crabs from the game, because apparently they were too scary for most playtesters. Unfortunate. I will admit as well that my lighting here is very wonky. No excuses. I guess I just kind of phoned it in here. Oh no, this door is completely unopenable. Where do I go now? Well, clearly there's a ladder and a barnacle, So I must have to go there. Darn. There's also stuff behind there. Wow. Wait a minute. Things spawn behind you? That's terrible, Mr. Level Designer. Anyway, it looks like the path is, well, mostly clear. Except for that. There we go. As tradition for all my maps, I've hidden a 3D model or 3D scan of my dog in all of them. Without the texture because I couldn't figure out how to get textures in the game at that point. Really, not many people did. Green is good, though. Again, I said that this map ends with a kind of, sort of, tip of the hat to Crash Course. This is the room that you start in Crash Course. And, clearly it's vacant now. I don't know if this is a prequel or a sequel. It's up to you. I don't know. I'm not a writer. Anyway, at the end of that light is when the Mind Break Part 2 ends. And, yeah. Let's go ahead and walk toward the light. I don't recommend that in real life, though. And that's Mind Break Part 2. Originally, I was going to make a Mind Break Part 3, but I kind of just didn't want to. I don't know, I got bored of making maps for Half Life Alyx. I wanted more guns and features to be added. So my plan was I would wait for the community, as they usually do, to make greater things for me to work with. And just as I expected, yeah, the community has done some amazing things with Half Life Alyx workshop mods. We see stuff such as portal recreations and even like completely new textures I would call related to something like Hitman or Max Payne. I don't really know, but it's amazing. Check out the workshop. Even though that this map kind of ended a little soft compared to the rest of the map and is kind of, I don't know, I still think it's the best objective map I've made. I've learned a lot from making a few maps and really what should you do when designing levels for VR. It's very different than what you expect. It's just, you can't assume things. That's basically what I want you to take away from it. Also, playtesting. Always playtest your maps with people before you release. Mind Break Part 1 was probably the least playtested, at least externally, than any other map. And that kind of shows. I had a lot more playtesting for this map at kind of all parts of the actual level design. And it just kind of worked out. Crash Course was also extensively playtested, and it kind of also shows for that map as well. And that map is a much greater scale, probably bigger than both these two map part captures combined. But I do recommend that you, if you want to get into VR level design, Half-Life Alyx workshop tools are a great way to get into it, because Hammer Tools is just great, and well, you have a giant foundation to work on. Definitely recommend it. It was a great experience, and I would do it again real soon. If I wanted to dive into full-time stuff with not much really payoff, well, bye.